Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. Today we're going to be taking on the new Unified Minds SlowDuck archetype. It's a very fun tag team, and let's talk about it in a bit more detail. Starting off with the basic concept, and we've seen a similar archetype like this before in a slightly different package. It used to be a Vilify Weavile that did 30 times the amount of Pokemon you discarded from your hand that turn, and we had Propagation Executes, which would replenish themselves to be a constant 120 damage baseline for the Weavile, and then any additional Pokemon you discarded that turn would be cream on top to reach one-hit KOs. It was trying to be a non-GX, like uptrade kind of deck, so it will function slightly differently to this one, because of course we are tag team based, but the damage cap of SlowDuck is just very, very high, as we know. And packing your deck with supporter cards is usually never a bad thing, because you'll have some consistency. So you'll have plenty of options to get what you want going on those opening turns, which is great. This deck is low maintenance. It's just, stick down a tag team, get 2 energies onto him, and start swinging with your supporters, and try and use Laprases to recover Misties for your damage. It's effectively the propagation that I was talking about with Execute. We now have via a Lapras, which is really cool. There's also the stamp proofing argument. If you have a bunch of Lapras down, if you have the fast called Dragonite that we're playing in play, and your opponent hits us with a reset stamp, in theory, if we had 4 Lapras, we could get back 4 Misties, which accounts for 160 damage, and then playing the Misties that turn, getting 3 additional supporters, would mean that even from a 0-card hand, we could technically burst out 240 damage with our Ditch and Splash attack. So, in many ways, we are stamp-proof. That, of course, bears in mind that you've already got the Laprases into play, you've already used a bunch of Misties, or you have Fast Call Dragonite to get you out of a pinch, but these things are very possible. And don't sleep on the amount of damage that the SlowDuck can churn out. When you play the deck in a way that I've built it, the damage is insane. So you really are just a 1-hit KO merchant. Don't worry about that. Even through tag teams, you can get through them relatively easily. And there are obviously some hiccups here and there. Obviously, there's a slightly awkward thing where we have a 2-energy attack cost. So if we get 1-hit KO, things slow down. And sometimes we may end up passing turns. And I'm not playing Gust in this deck either. So there are obviously some weak points here, but the damage output certainly isn't one of them. That's the main selling point of the deck. Let's jump into the Pokemon now, starting off with the Psyduck and Slowpoke tag team, 250 hit point water type, with the Ditch and Splash attack, which is the core of the deck. For 2 waters, you do 40 for each supporter that you discard from your hand that turn. So pretty awesome. We have the Lapras as a 4-of as well. Once during a turn, you may put a Misty's Request from your discard pile into your hand. So these Misties are instantly recoverable the entire time, even so that we can use that supporter this turn, because of course Misties effectively adds 80 damage to your hand, because you play her, so you -1 supporter, but then you get 3 more, so it's a net gain of 2 supporters from your hand, and you can even use other Mermaid calls to get back that Misty that you played that turn as well. So you can keep recovering this damage, which is always amazing, and Lapras is going to have to be spammed onto your board so that we can use Ditch and Splash as effectively as possible. We also have the Thrilling Times GX attack from Slowpoke and Psyduck. Don't sleep on it. You flip 1 coin if heads, you do 100 more damage. So in random spots where maybe you're trying to hold a bunch of supporters in your hand to knock out a big tag team the following turn, but your opponent has just something like a Jirachi sat in the active, you can just go for Thrilling Times. If heads, you get to take a cheeky easy prize, which is nice, rather than having to dump resources into a non-GX and then be out of range of a tag team on a future turn. The Thrilling Times might be worth the risk sometimes. You'll never get to 8 energy, so don't even worry about flipping 10 coins. It's obviously meme-worthy, but not for this deck, really. A couple Dedennes give us extra consistency for helping us get manual attachments turn 1 and making us find Slowpoke and Psyduck turn 1. These are 2 integral things that we need to do on exactly turn 1. And we don't play many conventional supporters in this deck. We play a lot of wacky ones that synergize, with the deck better overall. But it does make it more difficult for us to just find, a Water Energy and a Slowpoke on turn 1. We're playing maximum Cherish Ball, so being able to Dedenne change helps us see a fresh 6 cards and hopefully get towards those pieces in a bad spot. And of course, it can be, like a late game refresh of your hand, getting to 6 new cards, then do your Mermaid calls all afterwards, and then you can probably have enough supporters to do a big Ditch and Splash. That's the idea. 1 bench barrier, obviously going to help out against Pikarom and also against Beastbox, so they can't snipe Dedenne very easily. And then we have 1 of each Dragonite. The new Dragonite has the Hurricane Charge attack. Once during a turn, you may attach a Lightning and a Water to your Pokemon in any way that you like. We're only playing Water Energies in here. I thought about adding in 1 copy of Lightning. It means that you could then have access to Tingly Return GX to maybe stall for a turn. And it would mean that you could get full value from Hurricane Charge like once during the game. That would mean that even if like you don't have a SlowDuck on the bench, and your SlowDuck with 2 energies gets knocked out, you could like promote a Lapras, Hurricane Charge to the Lightning to the Lapras, the Water to the bench Slowpoke, and then attach Return to the Slowpoke and then like retreat into it. But that's a little bit too niche. It requires too much stuff. And I would imagine you probably have 2 Slowpokes in play for the most part. Anyway, that's not the difficulty. So currently we're just playing Waters, but that alone is important for, once again, the situation where your active SlowDuck gets knocked out, you have no more energies in play, you can then go promote your new SlowDuck, play a Lance Prism Star, get this Dragonite out, attach a Water with Hurricane Charge, and then attach naturally for turn to get your next Ditch and Splash on the go. That's the whole idea. And then Fast Call Dragonite is like cream on top, really. You're able to, once per turn, search your deck for a supporter. This can either just be naturally just getting you more damage, deck thinning, but also it can get you your important supporters at the right times. Bear in mind, we play things like Whitney in this deck. Obviously, you have synergy with Ditch and Splash. You can dump a bunch of Whitneys early, then have Fast Call for the late game. If you get hit with a reset stamp, you could use your 4th copy of Whitney to draw you 7 cards, and then Mermaid Call a bunch of times to get your Misty's back to try and get a big 1-hit KO. That's the idea. So these Dragonites both serve some great purposes in the deck. Onto the trainer cards. We really aren't playing many. We're playing 4 Great Potions. This helps us heal our SlowDuck. Definitely important if we're up against non-GX decks trying to reach, 2-hit KOs against us. Think about things like, again, Beast Box oftentimes, Aegislash, Giratina, a few things out there. So Great Potion definitely going to be an important card so that we can keep up with some of these non-GX like 2-hit KO decks. 4 Cherish Ball obviously helps with the Dedenne as well as the SlowDucks themselves. And 3 copies of Viridian Forest. We play 4 copies of Bill's Analysis in this deck. So it gives us very, it's much more searchable water energies for us, which is really important. Whilst at the same time, it's contesting the Stadium War against the opponent, removing things like Power Plant if we need to Dedenne, and again, just denying your opponent their optimal support, their stadium of choice. So Viridian comes in handy to give us better outs to find water energies, which is pretty important. Onto the supporters. This is the core of the deck, really. We play, I think it's 27 in total. Yeah, 27 total. Lance Prism Star comes in, so we can use these Dragonites. It's obviously the best if we're using it alongside a Lt.Surge strategy. You can go Surge, Lance, Misty, or you can go Surge, Misty into Lance if you don't have the Lance already in your hand. So definitely some cool combos. It gets working a lot more than you imagine just because you can Misty out the Lance for the right time. 2 Tate&Liza obviously helps us move in and out of our SlowDucks once again. Helps us get around status conditions. Helps us if we didn't lead a SlowDuck, we can still attack on turn 2. So again, pretty important. And even though they're fairly low counts, you can always miss these on turn 1 or use a Steven's Resolve turn 1 to try and get them for turn 2. So do bear that in mind. For Lt.Surge, if you don't start a SlowDuck and you drop 1 prize down, that's like an amazing thing for you to happen. Because then you can go Surge Misty Misty, Surge Misty, whatever else you want to do. So Surge, we play maximum copies just so that we have good chances of using Lt.Surge if ever we do fall behind. If your opponent takes the first knockout on the SlowDuck, you can then go for like Surge into all this other stuff. Make sure that you put yourself back in good stead. And again, stuff like getting that Lance going so that you can get your next SlowDuck live is pretty important. 4 fan clubs come in. Obviously, they're good on turn 1 as well, getting you a SlowDuck, getting you possibly Dedenne, and also helping you get Lapras out, which is always going to be pretty good. Whitney is amazing discard fodder for us. You try and get rid of 3. You can Misty's out these as well. On the turn, like if you have everything ready for like your turn, and all you need to do is get yourself damage, you just use a Misty's, go ahead and grab 3 Whitneys, dump those, knowing that you can find your final Whitney to draw you out of, into a fresh new hand, which would be absolutely amazing. The 4 Misty's Request is obviously mandatory so that we can reuse them with the Laprases. 4 Bill's Analysis, they help us get Ball Search cards and Viridian Forest in the opening turns, so it's not a horrific opening supporter if we have to, but also it can help us just get more supporter cards. So if you don't have a Misty's or whatever, or if you're doing it like pre-Surge or whatever, you can just use a Bills and hope to pick up supporter cards as well. He can be a plus 40 at the worst of times because you'll basically always see 2 supporters in your top 7 cards. And then we have 4 Steven's Resolve. We don't attack on turn 1 ever. So Stevens is a usable supporter on turn 1 and possibly like our best supporter turn 1 because he's so versatile. He can get us our next energy guaranteed. He can get us into Viridian. He can get us into the Tate&Liza, and he can get us into Misty's. He can do all sorts of things. just the most versatile option. So we may as well take the full benefit of Steven's. Like, a lot of decks would play Steven's Resolve if they, like, could get rid of them and stuff, and they weren't, like, deck thinning. Or, sorry, deck clogging, like, in the late game. Because he still does provide, like, really good turn 1s for you. But in this case, just because all we need to do turn 1 is go bench SlowDuck, attach, and then we can just Stevens very, very happily. Like, if we've already achieved those two things, just go ahead and Stevens. You get, like, the best hand possible. And then for the rest of the game, they just fuel your discard pile for fodder. So, yeah, really, really nice supporter card in general for this deck specifically. And then we played 9 energy total. So I think the 9 waters plus 3 Viridians, knowing that we can also bills for Viridian, gives us good odds to find this on turn 1 and turn 2. And there's plenty for us to see throughout the entire game to just keep attaching to our SlowDucks, which is obviously very important. So pause now. If you want to see the full list, it'll also be in the description as always, so bear that in mind. But for tech options, right now we don't have any techs for Shedinja. If you want to tech for Shedinja, you could add in double or triple Lusamine and then have 1 Faber. Then you could just remove all of their Shedinjas and start hitting through them throughout the entire game. Obviously the damage cap won't be an issue. You won't run out of supporters against them because you just have the Laprases. Pokécon's an interesting one. I thought about adding in 1 or 2. We don't play that many Pokemon. We play 13. But it could be reasonable and could be your best way of putting Dragonites back into your deck, which is the most important thing, so you can get full Lance value. It really is a shame if you draw into your Hurricane Charge Dragonite, the new one. So playing like 2 copies of Pokécon could be nice, just to maybe give yourself an out to put Dragonites back into your deck, whilst also searching for key pieces. If you want to play some other Pokemon, Volcanion Prism Star's Jet Geyser could be the pseudo-gust that we need. In certain situations, you can just push non-GXs out of the way, so you can up-trade a little bit better. And there's also the option for Keldeo, just sitting in the active, buying yourself some turns, so that you can build up your board a little bit nicer as well. Especially if you were playing the Dragonite, you can get into Sonic Edge a little bit quicker and have that Resolution Sword GX attack as well as a nice one-hit KO option. So I could definitely see these, even if they're just one-offs, creeping into the deck. Couple of the supporter options. If you don't believe in the Lance Prism package, you could go down the Hat Ladies build. My initial build of this deck did play 4 of each Hat Lady, because you can just Misty for like the other remaining pieces that you're missing. And then on turn 2, you can use a Morgan. Even if Morgan's essentially just being a max elixir, you can just get like 1 or 2 extra attachments onto your SlowDucks, and then you have them ready for the rest of the game. The issue there being that if you're playing Morgan, you're removing 120 damage from your hand all at once, because you have to discard all of those supporter cards, the Dana, the Evelyn, the Nita alongside the Morgan. So if you're using the Morgan that turn, it's very rare that you'll also have enough supporters in your hand as well to still take big knockouts. So I went down the Lance Prism route in the end. And then Blue Strategy is another supporter you could consider. It's one of those situations where if you have like 1 additional supporter card in your hand that you don't need for damage, you could end up using a Blues, because although your hand will be large with a bunch of supporters in your hand because you're holding all these Misties and whatnot, you'll dump them all with Ditch and Splash, and then Blues at the end of the turn after you've taken those prizes can refill you for your following turn. I think, again, Blue Strategy might be one of these cards that can help out if you're using a Lt.Surge. But other than that, I don't think he's all that critical. So possibly like a 1 or 2 count just to use after a Lt.Surge turn, but that's really about it. Onto the matchup overview. I think Mewtwo will be awkward because we don't have many ways around Altaria. Ultra Malamar is awkward as well. They simply uptrade on you. Same for Bucephalon. They're, using a 2-prize Pokemon to knock out 3-prize Pokemon all the time. Shedinja currently we're not teching for, so it's obviously a bad matchup. Keldeo, again, we're just attacking with SlowDuck the whole time, so we probably won't get through these Keldeos. Nidoqueen, because their damage output is so high, because we give them the benefit of time by not pressurizing them on turn 1 ever, they're probably going to be able to build up to Nidoqueens doing dangerous things. Spiritomb I also think is awkward. It's like a non-GX deck that isn't just a 2-hit KO deck. It'll reach even higher, so the Great Potions probably won't be doing enough of a job to skew that back in your favor. And then Rowlet Eggs, the tag team, will also be very difficult for us because they have type coverage on us, and they can also be tanky with things like Choice Helmets and a few other things here and there. So they're definitely going to be chunky. They require a bunch of resources out of us, and they can one-shot us like on turn 2 if they used Super Growth to get a Serena on turn 1. So that gets really ugly. So I think that matchup would also be pretty poor. My closing thoughts are that this archetype has to sit in the rogue fun zone. Its damage output is insane when you build it in this way. If you want to make it more serious, you could go down adding in 4 custom catchers. so you can target down tag teams a lot more often and target down other stuff, so you can get those upgrades that you're looking for. But at the same time, it does mean that whenever you're drawing cards with things like Whitney or things like Dedenne, you're not getting into supporters as often. And when you're not drawing into physical supporter cards, that hurts your damage output. And that's always something you have to bear in mind. There is still a lot of RNG based with this deck, even though a lot of turns you will be using Misty just to tutor out supporters. There are some key turns where you have to dig with Dedenne or dig with Whitney, and you hope that the amount of draw cards are enough supporters for you to still get one-hit KOs to maybe close out a game. So adding in these custom catchers might sort of tempt you to use other supporters on that turn. Things like Bill's Analysis to try and hit a Gust effect. Then you miss, and then you don't have like all the pieces that you're looking for, rather than just going for a safe route of going just to Misty's that turn and gathering supporters for future turns as well as like the active knockout. So that's always something you have to sort of weigh up with this deck. A lot of the times you do want to end your turn on using a Misty's, getting 3 more supporters out of the deck, and then dumping them all for a big knockout. That's at least how I've experienced it. Unless you're up against non-GX matchups, then you can breeze through the game doing whatever you want to do. You can use all those bills when you're up against non-GX decks, because you basically want to dig for great potions and thin your deck of non-supporter cards as well. So that's pretty much what you're trying to do there. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of the SlowDuck archetype. Definitely a fun one. It's one that I wrestled with at the beginning of this format. I was like, man, this damage output is so tempting that if you can get it to work, it's really worthwhile. Right now, I think you're sacrificing too much to be a serious contender for Worlds. So definitely one that you can explore. Let me know how you've tried to build SlowDuck. Is it vastly different to mine? I'll hear it all down below. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you tomorrow for another deck video.